But it's a very, very difficult time, for me personally. I've been working for a number of months on preparing Siyum. Quite frankly, for the length of Chagiga, I should have finished the Masechta faster than I did. It's not indicative of great hasmada. I want to publicly thank Dov. He's been keeping on pushing me when I said, I'm never going to finish. He kept pushing me and learning with me sometimes to make sure that I kept it going. It's important. We've had several opportunities to make a Siyum memory of Daddy since he died, and it's very difficult. 50th year somehow, Thanksgiving, all of it coming at the same time. I don't know, Baruch. Every time we plan, to come to your house on Thanksgiving, and it's not because you don't cook so well. That's not the issue, but it's hard, and we're all together, which I think is very significant to Daddy, very significant to Bubby. We will get along so beautifully, and to have everyone together, and I know that myself and everyone in the room feels the absence, that Esti's not with us in person. Of course, Esti always does tremendous kibbud avim. Every year goes to see, to Daddy, to Kever Avos, to go to see him personally. She has a very close relationship with him, a very special relationship, that she makes that trip every single year. I'm sure she's glad to see Mickey, who we also miss, but I know that even if Mickey wasn't there, this is something that Esti feels very strongly about, and we're sorry that she's not here tonight. We're sorry Mickey's not here. We're sorry Yaron is not here. And of course, again, I'll say it again, we're all thinking about him, and he should be safe together with all the Chayalim who are protecting Am Yisrael. And I know that having everybody together, and it means a lot that Honey and Herb are here, and that Safti and Zaidi are here, and Yirmi and Shira. Yirmi meant a lot to Grandpa Muchacho as well, as you well know. And I spoke with Elisheva before Shabbos this week. It's appropriate that everybody who's gathered here is here, and it's a challenge to remember to learn the lessons of the lives that we are commemorating, and to carry on those messages in our own lives, and at the same time not to be sad but to be heartened by the fact that we come from somewhere, that we have these tremendous roots. At the beginning of this week's parsha, it's very interesting. I noted, I knocked this morning in Shul, I noted the difference in the Haftorah and the Torah telling the story. The Torah says, "Vayesei Yaakov mi Be'er-Sheva Yelech Harana," so that it talks about a very controlled, thought-out, planned-out trip. Vayetze, he had somewhere to leave from. Vayelech, and he went to Haran. Right? He came from somewhere, he was going somewhere, it was organized, it was planned. The Haftorah says not so fast. Vayivrach Yaakov Sidei Aram. He was racing, he was running away, he was like, panic, grab a bag, hop in the car, and evacuate. And it's not that we need to evacuate. It's not Vayivrach Yaakov. It's Vayetze. We come from somewhere, we're going somewhere, and the messages and the lessons and the affection and the love that we feel for each other, that we have from our parents, from our father, from our grandmother, are all things that we can, in a happy sort of a way, carry forward to help make us, to bring us menucha, and to bring us nechama, and to make us stronger. Maseches Chagiga deals with really, it's about holidays. It's kind of like within Seder Moed, where you have Masechta, which are specifically about Shabbos and Megillah and Pesach and Sukkah and so forth. So here's a Masechta that's kind of a general halachos of Chagiga. And specifically, he talks about the mitzvah of the Korban Chagiga. It's a mitzvah aliyah regel, and a good portion of the first parak talks about the mitzvah of visiting Yerushalayim, shalosh pamim b'shana yerekol zechurcha, 3 times a year. Everybody has to come to Eretz Yisrael, to Yerushalayim, and when you're there, you bring an olas riyah, you bring a korban olah upon coming to the Beis HaMikdash, and then you also bring a korban chagiga, which you eat as your suda, as your Yom Tov meal upon those occasions of Lila Regel. And that's most of the first parak deals with that. The Masechta also spends a tremendous amount of time dealing with the laws of Tumah and Tahara. In relation to Karbanos, it starts to speak about you have to be Tahor in order to bring a Karban. So there's a tremendous amount of discussion and conversation about the laws of Tumah and Tahara. I may have mentioned a moment ago that the difficulty sometimes in getting through the Masechta, the Tumah and Tahara part weren't exactly the parts that were most uplifting and inspiring, but very important to know these halachos. And a lot of the second parak and the third parak deal with, the second half of the second parak and the third parak deal primarily with those sorts of issues, which are very important. B'meheri Yameinu Shiva now, and the Beis Hamikdash should be rebuilt, so those halachos should be much more practical and much more uplifting, because we really we see a positive reason to really master them and maintain eating things al Taras HaKodesh, so that we can go into the Makom HaMikdash. The second parak, which to me is the most fascinating part, the first half of the second parak, which to me is the most fascinating part of the Masechta, deals with, it's called Ein Darshan, and talks about things that you're not allowed to learn, or certain restrictions that we have. You can't learn alone, you can't learn unless you're taught by a Rebbe who has specific knowledge about that. And it talks about things, about the arayos, illicit relationships, and it talks about the Maaseh Bereshis. You're not allowed to learn about the story of creation, and the Maaseh Merkava, the story of Yechezkel's Nevuah, of what it was that the Kisei HaKavod, that God's holy entourage, as it were, what it looked like. These are all issues, these are all things that we're learning about, which are on the surface, okay, they're psukim, you learn them, you read them, you understand them, but they really are much deeper, they're much more convoluted, they're much more, deeper secret, meaning so the Torah, the secrets of the Torah, that you really can't just assume that just like this, you can pick up an art scroll, read it, and now you understand the greatness of Hashem. Now you understand the workings of Hashem in this world. So to me, that was really the most challenging and fascinating part of the Masechta. So I thought tonight we'd spend just a minute and make this scene to talk about an interesting machlokas, what I think is a very interesting machlokas about Maaseh Bereshis, which we're limited in how we're allowed to study all about the history, the story of the creation of the world. Is a very fascinating machlokas in Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Tana Rabbanan Daf Yudei Zamin Aleph, the Gemara says, Beis Shammai Omrim Shamayim Nivru Tchila V'Achar Kach Nivru Haaretz. Beis Shammai say that first the heavens were created, and then the earth was created. Shenamar, as it says, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'es haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens, and then He created the earth. That's the pasuk. Say Beis Hillel, no. Beis Hillel say, Eretz nivreisa tchila. No, the land was created first. V'achar kach shamayim shenamar v'yom asos Hashem Elokim Eretz v'shamayim. Later in Parshas Bereshis, in the second parak, it says, he's referring to the day that Hashem Elokim created Eretz v'shamayim, the earth and the heavens. So Beis Shammai take the pasuk and say as Hashemayim v'es haaretz, that the heavens were created first. And Beis Hillel look at the pasuk and they say no. In fact, Eretz v'shamayim. It's the reverse that's true. So the Gemara goes on and tries to understand what exactly is going on. Here the Chachamim come, the Rabbanan say that no, that really the Shamayim and the Aretz were created together, and both are equally important in the creation. And that's the way the Chachamim kind of say, not Beis Shammai, not Beis Hillel, but rather Chachamim tell us that in fact it's all Achas Nivra, created at once. Shnemar Af Yadi Yasta Aretz, meaning Tivcha Shamayim. Okay, so the Chachamim say no, they're all done at the same time. Now, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, they're looking to argue with each other. Beis Shammai says to Beis Hillel, how can you say such a thing? How can you say such a thing that the Shamayim was made after the heaven? Okay, who ever heard of such a thing? At first you create the ottoman, the footstool, and then you create the chair. All right, Kol Amar Hashem, Hashamayim Kisi, V'Haaretz Hadom Raglai. Hashem says that the Shamayim is my chair, and the Eretz, the land, is Hadom Raglai, is my footstool. So who builds the footstool before they build the chair? And Beis Hillel turns around, they argue with Beis Shammai, and they say, 1 second, it doesn't make sense. Who builds the second story of the house? Is it possible to build the upstairs, the Shamayim, before you build the downstairs of the house? First you have to have the foundation, you have to have the Eretz. So on the surface, it's a machlokas about how do you translate psukim. The psukim we have to get to, and it's not really for tonight, but there's a steer in the psukim, right? Like one pasuk says Shamayim v'Aretz, and one pasuk says Eretz the Shamayim, which is a lot of Torah on that. What's the deal with that? What's going on? But the answer is that Chum come along and say, no, it's all nivro ka'achas. They're all together equally important. Are they really arguing about a specific pshat, Shamayim v'Aretz, Eretz v'Shamayim? Are they really arguing about the Metzius? That Beis Shammai are saying, no, the Shamayim was built first, And they still say, no, the Eretz was created first? Or is there something else, is something more in this machlokas? So the Maharsha on the Daf says as follows. The Maharsha says, asks the following question. Ma makom machlokas zu? Ma makom machlokas zu? What kind of argument is this? Don't we know that, that Bereshit Bereshit is one ma'amar, it's one expression by God, and in one expression He created Shamayim and Eretz together, and therefore Vaday Shnivra Kol B'Pam Achas. Everything was created at the same time. So what's pshat? One came before the other. There must be a deeper meaning. So the Mashas explains as follows. Ein hakavana kan kipshuta b'kedimas hatzman. Don't look at the simple explanation that we're arguing here about which came first, the Shamayim or the Eretz in chronological order. Elo nechluku kan b'chol davar sheyesh bo pnimios v'chitzonios. What they're arguing about here is all things that have both something on an inner strength, an inner self, and something outside of it. Take, for example, a fruit. Says the Maharsha, how does an orange grow? How does an orange grow? Is it pshat that the outside, the shell which protects it, grows, and then once the outer shell grows, inside the fruit, the pulp, can now expand and grow and develop? Or is it that the inside, the seed grows and it blossoms and it develops and the pulp starts to expand, and the mela, as it expands, so too does the outer shell, which is covering it, expand as well. What are they talking about? What's the Maharsha talking about over here? So according to Beis Shammai, Beis Shammai will tell us that the most important thing in the world is that they don't believe that the outer shell is what's the outer shell? That which is min hashamayim. God's impact on the world. That which comes from Hashem. So that's the outer shell. And Beis Hillel will talk about that which comes from the earth, that which comes is created on the earth, right? The spiritual things that come from God, the physical things that come from the earth, that come from man, from the earth, which is the most important. Beis Shammai are saying that which comes from God, the outer spiritual realm, which then impacts upon the physical world, and that's what allows the physical world, the Eretz, to grow and develop. And Beis Hillel say no, the Eretz grows and develops, and then it comes to interact with that which comes on the outside. So the Ben Yehoyada in his parish, he asked, so what's the implication? What does this have to do, with us? So Ben Yehoyada will tell us that according to this Beis Shammai, B'derech Klal, they're arguing on, is the spiritual world most important, or is the physical world most important? And Beis Shammai is saying spiritual world comes first. First you have to have tikkun ha-nefesh, and then tikkun ha-guf. And Beis Hillel will say no, the spiritual world is secondary to that which comes in the physical realm, in the world of Eretz. Is it Eretz v'shamayim? That's Beis Hillel. Is it first the physical, which leads to a spiritual growth? Or is it no, it's Shamayim v'aretz, Beis Shammai, that you have this sense of, idea of, everything comes from Hashem, Hashem's hashpah on the world, and only then can it form within us physical and growth in the Gashmi sort of way. It seems to me that one of the very important messages that we learned from Daddy, one of the very important messages in terms of our chinuch, I think it's a message that we learned from Bubby as well, is the message of the Chachamim in this particular Gemara. And the Chachamim come and say that in the end of the day, biyachad nivra, they came together. There has to be a spiritual component. There has to be that sense of, we understand that things come min hashamayim, that there's a spiritual one, there's a klipa, as it were, that protects the fruit. There's an outer shell, the hashpah of the spirit, of the ruach of Hashem. There's the soulfulness that has to be part of who and what we are all about. And at the same time, we have to recognize that we have an obligation to build the Eretz. We have an obligation. It starts with us taking the chomer, taking the materials that are at our disposal, that we have available to us, and we have to make something of them. And we have to bring them up to a point where we can elevate beyond this physical world and reach a level of spirituality as well. Dovi, I'll suggest if you take your thought from before from Rabbi Golden, that maybe that's pshat in Vayifka B'Makom. Vayifka B'Makom, so Pegia is happenstance. I happen to be there. B'Makom is this is the place. B'Hamakom is the correct grammatical way to say it. Perhaps the answer, what you're suggesting is, for if it's just happenstance, it's Vayifka. Okay, when you take Vayifka, it's just a place to sleep, and turn into B'Makom, the place, that's when you merge together the opinion of Chachamim, you merge the opinions of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. When you take the Ruchani, Tzad Ruchani, and you find that even in a place that's just on a place, if in the everyday, the activities that you do on a daily basis, the Dvarim Chomriyim that we are involved in on a daily basis, the earthly pursuits, and we turn them into a place that brings us to, Ma Nora HaMakom Hazeh, then we've accomplished the goal of merging together the two realms of Eretz V'Shamayim and Shamayim V'Aretz. And I think that was a message, that was a lesson, that was part of our chinuch, and that's very much the way we grew up. We should be zocha to learn this Masechta, learn other Masechtas, and take the Torah that we learn, the spiritual aspirations that we have, and bring them together into our normal, everyday, physical and human goals. And we should understand that human goals are not just merely Dvarim Chomriyim. They're things that have to be enveloped by an outer shell, an outer kuppah, which in fact brings spirituality and brings religiosity and brings holiness into everything that we do, into everything that we are, and who we want to become. And that, I think, is a tremendous message, and I think is a tremendous lesson for all of us on this particular occasion. We'll conclude the Masechta. Gemara says, I told you the third parak talks about Tum and Tahara, so it talks about what type of kelim can become Tameh. So it's interesting, Kana Mizbeach, we know the Mizbeach is called Mizbach Adama. The Mizbeach is called Mizbach Adama, right? Mizbach Adama Tasali. So if the Mizbeach is made out of Adam, instead of earth, so then it can't be Makabal Tumah. But we also know that how was the Mizbeach made? There were two Mizbachot. One was Nechoshes, the outer Mizbeach, and one was gold, the inner Mizbeach. What were they made of really? They were made out of wood, and they were Mitzupim Zahav. They were coated. There was a coating of metal, either Nechoshes in one case, or Zahav, gold, in the other case. So the question becomes, are we, can they be Makabel Tumah? Because they have this outer coating. So the Gemara says, Kol HaKelim Shebamigdash Yesh Lem Shniyim. All the kelim of the Beis Hamikdash require Tevilah, except for the Mizbeach Hazav and the Mizbeach HaNechoshes, because they're considered not like kelim, they're considered Adamah, they're considered like Karka, and therefore they're not kelim to be Kamal Tumah. How do we know? As Mizbeach HaNechoshes is called Adamah, the Ksiv, Mizbeach Adamah Tasali. You should make for me a Mizbeach out of earth, and this is a pasuk in Yisrael. So that's the Mizbeach HaNechoshes. Mizbeach HaZahav is also called Adamah, because it compares the menorah and the mizbechos.